Ugh, you said you were over him, but his hoodie is still in your rotation. It's time. Grab your phone, snap a few pics, and sell it on Depop. Listed in minutes, with no selling fees. And just like that, a guy 500 miles away just paid full price for your closure. And right on cue.
Hey, still got my hoodie?
Nope, but I've got tonight's dinner paid for. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste. List now with no selling fees. Payment processing fees and boosting fees still apply. See website for details.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of True Crime with Caitlyn. Today I'm going to tell you all about a case of two predators who hunted down victims through the Grindr app and committed a murder that local police had never seen before. If it weren't for an unlikely tip, it's probable that these predators would have gotten away with murder and likely went on to kill more innocent men. This is the murder of Adrien Murphy. Adrien Murphy was an Irishman born into a large family in Kilkenny, Republic of Ireland. He was actually the youngest of 9 children. Growing up, the small family home was a bit of a squeeze, but it didn't stop Adrien from flourishing. From a very young age, I'm talking like 5-year-old, it was clear that he was a very talented dancer. He would attend a dance school with 2 of his sisters. Adrien was a gifted Irish dancer, and if you go and search his name up on YouTube, there's quite a few videos of him dancing, and he is absolutely incredible. Adrien would dance from the moment he opened his eyes until the minute that they closed, and even if he wasn't stood up, he would be tapping away with his feet. He went on to become a 7 times Irish dance champion. Every competition he entered, he won, and he would go on to make his passion his career. Adrien left Kilkenny in 1996 and travelled over to America, where he performed in New York. After this, he decided to move once again, going to New Zealand, and this is where his life completely changed. Adrien opened up his own dance company, and he would put on his own shows and productions such as Feet of Fire, Fire Dance and Celtic Dance Force, and each and every one of them were a massive hit. His career skyrocketed. He became very successful. Adrien was driven and hardworking, dedicated to his craft. So if he was working on an upcoming show, he was tunnel visioned. He was zoned in on it. You weren't going to get a text back from him because the show was going to be perfect, and they always were. As a person, Adrien was described as an explosion of colour. He was the life and soul of the party. He was a proper laugh. Whenever you were with him, your mouth and your face would hurt of all of the laughing that you would do. He was like a ball of energy. Adrien always had a story to tell. He was also described as very kind, gentle, loving, and a wonderful man. He was young, free, and single, and took hold of life with both hands, never letting an opportunity go to waste. He enjoyed spending time with his friends. There are so many videos of him out there where him and his mates are sitting on a boat having a couple of drinks together. He was a social butterfly. He could and would talk to anyone about anything. He was very well travelled, he enjoyed going on holiday, he enjoyed shopping, and in general, he just had a love for life. After spending 9 years in New Zealand, Adrien decided that once again it was time for a change. He wanted to go where opportunities seemed endless, and so he moved to London. He was either living in or in the process of moving into a 17th floor, £1.2 million Riverview flat in Battersea, London on Lombard Wharf. He managed to secure a job as a choreographer at the incredibly prestigious Royal Academy of Dance. Life for Adrien seemed like it was just getting better and better. He was living the dream, and he was living a life that so many other people could only wish and dream for. All of this, however, everything that he had worked so hard for would be ripped away from him.
Eczema is unpredictable, but you can flare less with Ebglyss, a once-monthly treatment for moderate to severe eczema. After an initial 4-month or longer dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 mg per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
On the 4th of June 2019, a friend of Adrian's named Simon arrived at the apartment. He let himself inside and found 43-year-old Adrian lay in bed. It was clear to Simon that he wasn't sleeping. He wasn't just passed out, he was dead. Simon contacted emergency services and together, paramedics and police quickly arrived to the flat. Simon told the officers that something here didn't look right, it didn't fit, and that was a bottle of whiskey on the coffee table. Apparently, Adrian never drank whiskey, and that's why it immediately stood out to Simon. Inside of the apartment, there was no sign of any break-in and no signs of a struggle. It looked like Adrian had simply laid down and died. Simon, with the CSI, walked through the apartment, kind of taking stock of things. Was anything out of place? Did anything look like it was missing? And the answer to that was yes. Adrian's bank cards, his laptop and his phone had all disappeared, along with some other personal belongings. Adrian's phone would soon be found inside of the apartment, but it was in the toilet with a can of Coke weighing it down in the water, making sure that it wasn't floating. This was clear that whoever had put it there wanted the phone to break. Clearly, there was something on there that someone wanted to hide. As quick as they were able to, the phone was extracted from the toilet to prevent even more potential damage. The scene was dusted for fingerprints and one was lifted off of the whiskey bottle. It didn't belong to Adrian. So that explained the whiskey bottle being out when he wasn't even a whiskey drinker. But who did it belong to? The fingerprint was sent to the database and uploaded, police hoping that they would get a match. Adrian's body would be transported from the scene and sent for a post-mortem examination. This was an unusual death, and the pathologist couldn't determine what had killed him. Why had Adrian died? There was no obvious sign to the pathologist. He did have an underlying health issue with his heart, I believe, but that wasn't what caused his death. A blood sample was taken from Adrian, and that was sent off for a toxicology report. Hopefully, that would yield some answers. In the meantime, detectives got a hit on the fingerprint. It belonged to a man who was in the system, in the database, after he had been incarcerated on drug offences. He was someone known to the police. This was 24-year-old Joel O'Sea. I literally could not find a single thing about Joel or his background, apart from it was said that he came from a good family, but after he started getting into legal trouble with the police, they left him to crack on and they were no longer in contact. At the time of the crime, he was living in the Seven Sisters area of London, which is about an hour away from Battersea. When the CCTV footage was recovered from the building, it was examined, and there he was. On the 1st of June, at around about 10:30 p.m, Joel walks through the reception area and into the lift. He clicks a couple of buttons on the lift as if he doesn't know which floor he's going to. Maybe Adrian had just said to him, I'm in flat, I don't know, 310, but he didn't say that he was on the 17th floor. When Joel finally arrives at the correct floor, he is visibly relieved and walks out of the lift empty-handed. He isn't seen again until just after midnight when he's back in the lift, but now he's clutching a Louis Vuitton bag. Throughout his time within the flat, Joel is sat on his phone, texting back and forth, sending over 20 messages to someone that we come to discover is not just his accomplice, but his girlfriend. And that is 17-year-old Diana Cristea. Diana was born and raised in Romania, and to say that she had a difficult upbringing was an understatement. When she was only 12 years old, she was viciously raped by two men who filmed and photographed the attack and then posted it online for everyone to see. Following this, Diana's family decided to move to the UK for a fresh start. They wanted to start again, begin a new life, and start a new chapter. The move alone, however, wasn't enough to help Diana. Her mental health issues followed her from Romania, and she really struggled mentally. She began abusing drugs and getting into trouble with the police, and no matter what her mother did, she couldn't control Diana, and so at 14 years old, she was taken in by the social services. Diana would be placed into several different homes with foster parents, but she had troubles with each and every one. So eventually she was placed into a residential home for sexually exploited and abused children. This was in the Mill Hill area of London between Putney and Barnes. She met Joel while they were both on a train, and despite her literally and legally still being a child, she's like 16 at this point, and he's in his 20s, they began dating. Now, the couple wanted to make some money, but instead of going out and finding honest work, they decided they wanted to steal, manipulate, take what other people had worked so hard for. In May 2019, Joel attended a music festival in London, only he didn't even make it inside. When you get to festivals, and I am only speaking from experience of attending one singular festival, but when you walk in, there's dogs that smell you, and I guess that there's random bag searches too. I didn't realise this when I went to my first and only festival last year. I went to Leeds to see Chapel Roan, who was absolutely amazing by the way, and I almost had heart palpitations when we were walking in because I carry paracetamol wherever I go, and I thought the security were going to think I was a drug smuggler, that they wouldn't believe that it was actually paracetamol in my bag. Thankfully, I didn't get pulled by the security and I had me paracetamol for me hangover the next day. So, going back to the case, Joel got stopped before he got into the festival, and thankfully so, because he was carrying a knife alongside having a bag of white pills on him. He was arrested, he had his phone seized, and the white pills were tested and determined to have been caffeine tablets, so he was probably just going to try rip people off with them. Following this, Joel expressed his disappointment to Diana. This plan to make some quick cash didn't work. But she reassured him because she had another plan. The couple downloaded the Grindr app and set up a profile under a fake name. The pictures on the profile were of Joel, only he used the name Remy on the app. Grindr, if you didn't know in short, is an app for men within the LGBTQIA+ community where they find other men for casual sex or dates. The couple's plan was that they were going to target some of these men like predators. They were going to fish out who looked like they had money. So I gathered that they looked at the clothes that the men were wearing. Were they designer? They probably looked in the background of pictures to see what belongings they had. They would target the men who looked like they had a little bit of money, initiate a one-night stand with them, but they were actually going to rob them. Joel and Diana thought that the men would probably be too embarrassed about what had happened to them to go to the police, or maybe the victim would be a closeted man and that's what would stop them from going to make a report. This is what they were relying on. They were relying on two things actually. They relied on the mutual trust within the LGBTQIA+ community to get a man to allow Joel into their home, and relied on the victim feeling shame about what had happened to them so that they wouldn't talk. An evil, diabolical plan, and in the words of Giselle Pellicourt, shame must change sides. They should feel ashamed that they had concocted such a horrific plan. On the 30th of May 2019, this is days before Adrian is discovered dead, Joel had preyed upon someone else. This person isn't named publicly, so for the sake of this episode, I'm going to refer to him as Brad. Brad and Joel met each other on Grindr and set a plan. Joel was going to come over to Brad's home in Walthamstow, London, for them to have sex. Over messages, Joel seemed really keen, really interested and flirty, but in person, when he arrived, he seemed different, more reserved and not so sure. This makes me believe that it was actually Diana who was doing all of the texting. Recognising a slight discomfort, Brad tried to make Joel feel more comfortable and at ease, so he sat him down in a nice chair and gave him a massage. He rubbed his feet and he tried kissing him. At one point he would go to the bathroom, and when he came back out, Joel handed him a drink of orange juice. Without a second thought, Brad gulped down. The next thing that he remembers was waking up in the hospital with drips in his arm and on a life support machine. He was an inch away from dying. One of Brad's friends had turned up at his home to find him half naked and completely out of it. He was miles away, babbling on, making absolutely no sense. It was clear that something was wrong, that he had been spiked. Brad's home had been ransacked and many of his personal belongings had been taken. He had been drugged, robbed and almost died, but thankfully he made a recovery and he went to the police. Now the police were handling the death of Adrian, some of the similarities between both of the cases made the detectives link them. Both of them were gay men who seemed to have been drugged to be robbed. This was a crime of financial gain. CCTV showed Joel after the attack on Brad in the Tottenham area of London walking around with his hands full. He was carrying like 5 bags, all of which were mostly packed with Brad's belongings. Following Adrian's death, Diana tried flogging as much of his belongings online as she could, including his Louis Vuitton wallet, but not before they took out his cards and tried rinsing them. The couple started off by making small transactions in shops, using contactless to buy things. They even booked a hotel room, and then they purchased some expensive software for their laptop, which knocked them back around about £2,000. They set up a PayPal account in Adrian's name with his card and attempted to buy between £60,000 and £80,000 worth of jewellery and diamonds from an online American shop. Probably they wanted this to be delivered over to the UK so that they could sell it and make a fortune. The transaction didn't go through, however, because PayPal rightfully flagged it as money laundering. From her residential home in Mill Hill, Diana sold even more of Brad and Adrian's things, and the staff in the home noticed. They picked up on it and they asked Diana, "Whose things are these? Where did she get all of this stuff?" And she said that it all belonged to Joel, her boyfriend. She wanted to make some money and she wasn't going to let anything stop her or slow her down. She would lie through her back teeth if she had to. On the 12th of June, both Diana and Joel were arrested on suspicion of the murder of Adrien Murphy. Maybe their arrest came slightly prematurely though, because the officers were actually forced to release both of them on bail because they didn't have enough evidence to charge them. Now Diana and Joel know the police are onto them, so getting them back into custody and quickly, the urgency of that heightened. What was stopping them from fleeing, from leaving London? They had the opportunity to continue what they were doing, and what if they killed someone else? Police were desperate for Adrian's toxicology report, because if that showed a drug in his system, that he had been spiked, then that would be enough evidence to get Joel and Diana off of the streets and behind bars. But when that report did come back, it hadn't picked up any drug in Adrian's system. It couldn't be determined how Adrian had died. His death was unexplained. Now, detectives did not know what to do. What avenue could they investigate to get the evidence that they needed? They strongly believed that they knew who was involved, they knew who committed the murder, but how were they going to get the evidence to prove it? Detectives felt stuck and stumped. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go until they got a tip that blew open the case from a person that they least expected. The relationship between Diana and Joel was a contentious one at best, and they would often get into fiery arguments. The strain between them only worsened following their arrest, as I imagine they were getting paranoid about getting caught. They were angry at each other and blaming each other. Following one of their fallouts, police would receive a phone call from Diana. She reported that Joel was solely responsible for what had happened, that he had used a drug called scolamopine to incapacitate his victims, to knock them out so that he could rob them. Scopolamine, which I hope I'm saying correctly, is not a very big drug here in the UK, but it is an extremely dangerous one, which is nicknamed Devil's Breath, because once it's in your system and it dissolves, it can become almost completely untraceable. It's a drug that's very big in Colombia and apparently is very popular with robbers and rapists because of its ability to completely knock out the victims. Joel managed to get his hands on this drug after extensive research. It was imported to him in a broccoli shipment of all things, and he used this to spike Brad and Adrian, giving Adrian just a bit too much. That killed him. Following this report from Diana, the detective immediately got onto the lab to see if they could trace this drug. When a sample goes off for a toxicology testing report, they don't test for every single drug under the sun, so to try and trace this one, they needed to look for that one specifically. The detective was told, however, that wasn't possible. The only sample that they had from Adrian, the glass vial that the blood was contained in, had shattered. It had broken. They lost the sample. By some miracle, one of the detectives had actually, unfortunately, experienced this before, losing evidence and the detrimental consequences that come along with that. So because of that, he always went out of his way to request spare samples, and thankfully, he was working on this case and had obtained a spare sample. When this was carefully transported to the lab and examined, they were able to find traces of scopolamine, devil's breath, in Adrian's blood. Remnants of the drug were also found on the Coke can that was in Adrian's toilet and on a glass on the coffee table. The evidence spoke for itself. It told the story. The can of Coke was likely spiked and the contaminated drink was poured into a glass that Adrian drank from. So how did these two men come into contact? Joel had matched with Adrian on Grindr. Now Simon, his friend, said that Adrian wasn't a highly sexually active person. According to him, Adrian said he would rather go out shoe shopping than have sex. But Adrian loved a massage, and on Joel's profile it had a little tag or a little message saying that he gave massages, so maybe that's what drew Adrian to Joel. Joel arrived at the Battersea flat, spiked unsuspecting Adrian's drink, robbed him blind, and then left him to die. It's unclear if Joel actually knew that Adrian had died when he left, or if it was just as much a shock to him that he had died when he was arrested under suspicion of Adrian's murder. Joel Osei and Diana Christia were both arrested and charged with the murder of Adrien Murphy. Diana tried to deflect as much blame as she could, saying that she had nothing to do with it, and she tried to use evidence of her police report to back that up. If she was involved, why would she report it to the police? But during her interview, she eventually went back to answering only no comment to each question, which Joel had been doing all along. Their trial took place in early 2020, and by now, Diana's attitude towards Joel had changed. She was absolutely furious to have been dragged into all of it. And I say dragged lightly because by all accounts of the evidence, she was absolutely a willing participant in what they had done. Inside of the courtroom, there was the judge, the perpetrators, the legal representation, and the victim's family. 2020, lockdown, it's a surprise that the trial even went ahead because there were so many delays. Joel would take the stand and he spun a web of horrific lies about Adrian, painting him to be some awful man that he wasn't. He said that they had consensually had sex, Joel doing it in exchange for payment, but Adrian refused to pay him, and then following that, one thing had led to another. It's safe to say that no one in the room believed him. Joel stuck to this story until he was handed some notes, ones that he recognised. These were notes that he had written to Diana, telling her exactly what to say and what story to spin, what lies to tell. When he was handed these, his face dropped. He then looked up and admitted that everything that he had said was a lie, which sent gasps throughout the gallery. Joel would then go on to make a complete confession to what he had conspired to do and acted out on Adrian. He apologised to the Murphy family and told them that Adrian wasn't the awful man that he had portrayed. He wasn't even close. He was respectful, courteous, and kind. But despite all of them positive attributes, Joel still went on to do what he did. Joel tried to put forward a plea of manslaughter, as he said he didn't intend to kill Adrian, he only wanted to render him unconscious so that he could commit the robbery. Joel Osei would be found guilty of the murder of Adrien Murphy. He was handed a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 32 years to serve. He was also handed an additional 5-year sentence for the attack on Brad, who was able to identify him from a photo lineup. Diana Christia was found guilty of the murder too. She was handed a sentence of 16 years, but the judge made sure to tell her that had she not technically been a minor at the time of the crime, she would have got so much longer. Even after hearing that directly from the judge's mouth, she had the neck to try and appeal her sentence because she said that it was too long. Obviously, that got declined. The two were also convicted of several other charges, including theft and fraud. The attackers of Brad and the murderers of Adrien Murphy will be spending a long time in prison thinking about what they have done. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Don't forget to follow the podcast so that you never miss a new upload. You can find photos and updates over on the Instagram at TrueCrimeCaitlyn. I appreciate you all for being here, and I'll catch you all on the next one.